Hello there. So today is what day is it? It is May, I'll say 20th or 21st, something like that. I don't know. I'll have to double check after this video. So I'm having some breakfast here. With some cereal. Having that pretty frequently while I've been here at home. I could probably get a glass of water. Probably a good idea. Yeah, so it's like, I was checking the time of the oven here, but that's completely off. No way it's that time. I think it's about, I don't know, what does it say, 8:30, something like that. Yeah. So yeah, been not a terribly long time that I've had summer break here, but it's been a bit at least. Well, tomorrow I think it will have been 3 weeks since school year ended. So today's Wednesday. It's the middle of the week. Was gonna go to work today, but I really wasn't feeling it. My stomach was feeling a little weird, and I kind of just felt like I needed this today, and then go back to work tomorrow and Friday probably. So yeah, so I've had probably quite a few days of this last week and a half or so. So most of the days from like last Monday to, well, basically from last Monday to Tuesday or yesterday. Pretty much just been doing landscaping job with my dad, and I'll probably have, I reckon, probably a lot more days that I will be doing that. So anyways, work's been pretty good. Well, I mean, I don't want to share like, I'm not allowed to share like any like the specific details about like, oh, this is where we went or client use or anything like that. But I wouldn't even do that anyways. But we saw some pretty nice places. It worked out. I'm glad that I've been able to do that, and it's gone overall pretty well. I know that in quite a few of the videos that I had, summer sit-ins before today, this last week or week before, whatever, expressed a lot of anxiety about, you know, doing the job and all that, and I realized I was kind of overreacting. I'm sorry about that. You know, I don't really, you know, I don't really like it, but, you know, I do recognize that, not as in the job, but something else here. I'm just clarifying that. I don't like the fact that a lot of the times in my life, I feel pretty wound up by any sort of like big changes or anything. You know, it's like, you know, when I'm with a certain kind of flow or rhythm or whatever it feels. It can feel very unpleasant for me to try to change that up, you know. I don't mean necessarily just like, you know, small stuff or whatever. Like, that's perfectly fine. But, you know, I mean stuff like, you know, going from one school level to the next, right? Going from, you know, middle school to high school or high school to college, you know, or, right, you know, doing jobs again, right? I've done many jobs before, but basically, like, once, like, I kind of stopped doing them, I kind of got used to not doing them. It feels like, even though, like, I know internally, like, I'm thinking of objectively, like, I've done past jobs before, you know, all of them went fine, all went well, you know, I made some good money off of it, you know, things worked out, yet, I feel like my nervous system, right, I just, like I'm, you know, I'm kind of just been like, okay, I'm used to this new system or whatever, right, and it feels like when I'm trying to disturb that, when I'm trying to, it's weird because it feels like, okay, so if I'm going from, like a higher level sort of situation, now I kind of explain this a little bit, let's try to, right, so say like, you know, at the end of the school year, so I was going from, you know, I'm doing homework, I'm doing testing, you know, I'm doing, you know, classes and labor at school, to I'm going back home, right, and it's a lot more, you know, children relax and all that. That's not problematic for me. Like, I don't really feel particularly stressed out by that most of the time. Not to say I don't feel a little bit about that, but it's generally a lot less. But when I'm going from, you know, a lower level one, right, such as like if I'm used to, like right now, like I'm used to, you know, not doing too much other than just, you know, chore stuff, videos, you know, playing games, helping make meals, you know, a few other small productive stuff around the house to help my family out. But, you know, overall, or I'm not really working or anything, to going back to doing work, you know, going from a lower level stress situation to a higher one or whatever, right, or higher demand or whatever the thing is. Even though it's not really that bad, it feels like, it feels so much harder for me to just like not worry about it. No, I adapt fine, you know, I think. I figure things out. But I hope that makes some sense. Anyways, I was laying in my bed for a bit, to say the least. I was rewatching a video of mine. They have an older one, and you know, so I think it was from, I want to say, I think it was, what was it like? It was like April 25th or something. I don't know. Whatever. Probably completely off, but it was sometime around then. I think it was from the last. it's the second to last week of school, or maybe the third to last one, I don't know. It was sometime in April. Early to mid-April, I think it was. And, you know, I was kind of talking about how I made this video for my church friends because, you know, their dog had passed away and all that. And I'm not really entirely sure why I selected that video to rewatch. And honestly, I was considering just rewatching as many of these daily walk videos and the Somerset ones as I could to kind of reflect on them. But anyways, I kind of thought it was interesting. You know, I don't really know how to. I don't really know what I'm trying to say here, I guess. I guess it feels interesting because it's like, yeah, like when I'm in like a certain scenario, certain situation, right? Well, I'm used to. Right. So for now, it's being at home, right, and then, you know, working some days of the week, right? You know, with my dad. It feels weird to think a little bit back to, oh, you know, I finished school. You know, I just finished my first year of college, or just a few weeks ago, and it feels like that was like a whole different, you know, life or, you know, time or something like that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, really, even though it really wasn't like that long ago, you know, or that, you know, I don't know what day, but, you know, around a year ago, you know, here I was finishing up my high school senior year, which is crazy for me to think, you know. I've changed, you know, things have changed, circumstances have a little bit, but I'm not really significantly different, you know, from, you know, that version of myself. At least I don't feel like I am. But, so I don't know. I guess, it kind of just feels like, you know, I've had a thing sometimes, and I don't know if I'd say that like I fully, I don't know. I don't know if I think I fully would want to be back in it or whatever, but, you know, I've experienced this sort of phenomenon in my lifetime many times. I think many other people have as well, where, you know, when you have one thing, you know, you wish for the other, where you wish for something different, you know, where you kind of, or at least maybe you kind of like fantasize or think, you know, that'd be super cool or fun or whatever. But then when you have that, you know, you kind of wish for something else or the thing you had before. And, right, so like, for example, you know, I was kind of talking about how like, you know, I don't remember if it was in that video or those watching or not, but, you know, at least I reckon probably quite a few of them around that time. I was kind of talking about how nice it would be to, you know, be back home and be with my family and all that. And it has been nice. And I don't think, excuse me, I know that I really did not like, you know, waking up early for classes or, you know, doing all the homework, you know, and there was a lot of things that I did get anxious about and all that, right? But, you know, I kind of was like, oh, you know, I think it was super cool and fun to, you know, nice to be home. And it kind of has been. But, but then now here I am kind of being like, I'm looking forward to, my, my study abroad, session later this year, right? When I leave in July, it goes to end of November, right? So it'll be, quite a while, right? About 4.5 months or so, something like that. Or something, I don't know. Um, and I simultaneously feel like, okay, so kind of looking back on the first year and kind of being like, oh, I might imagine like, what if like later on, in my college experience, whatever, especially my junior, senior year, doing all the stuff like the major and all that, right? Maybe internships and all that stuff. And I might look back on my first, second year or whatever, being like, oh, this is kind of like the comfortable year or whatever. Or like, if I only could go back to that, right? This whole, it wasn't like super fun or interesting or anything, but, it was comfortable, right? It still had a lot of time ahead of me and all that, right? I was young, but but then like, I know that when I lived through much of that, it kind of just felt like I didn't really feel that way necessarily. At least not all the time. I'll say I didn't have moments, but where I didn't feel like, I'm young and I'm enjoying my, first year here, and I kind of felt bored a lot of times. I kind of felt just tired from the schoolwork and the labor and all that, right? It definitely wasn't bad, but wasn't like glamorous or anything, right? So kind of to watch out for that. But then I know like I've had a lot of times before in my past where I was kind of like, like once I kind of get to this sort of point in my life, right? So like maybe when I get to college, or maybe when I move out and have my own place, or maybe when I if I move to a certain place, which I'm talking about this like even before I even remotely even considered moving abroad. Like I'm just saying, like, when I was much younger, I didn't even think about moving out of the country, but I thought just moving to a different town or city or something, or have my own place and all that, or at least having my own house, even if I am pretty close to family here, regardless, right? And I think that there is some truth in that. You can feel maybe like freer, or like more like, more opportunities, or it's kind of like cooler or more fun or whatever, Not to say that it doesn't exist, because I think it does. But I think that kind of fades off a little bit, and it takes work to kind of keep on maintaining that feeling, or to maintain whatever the sort of realistic version of that might be, longer term. I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel like that one thing for myself, especially when it comes to sort of like environments, is like if I get used to a certain environment, I feel like I am responsible with the stuff that's around me and whatnot. At least I think so, right? I clean up after myself, right? I make sure to kind of help clean up any messes. Organize some stuff, right? Keep it fairly clean, all that, my own business, all the good stuff, right? But I do really seriously wonder, like, would I truly consider myself to be, fully grateful for the things that I have, right? Because you kind of just take stuff for granted, right? You kind of just, get used to the stuff that you have. This is really especially a problem, maybe not the most for myself, I don't think, but little maybe it is, but especially for a lot of other people like myself, white, heterosexual, Christian, American, born, cisgender men, right? That we kind of just take things for granted, right? Yes, it's just normal, right? But a lot of the things that I have, right, or kind of types of relationships that I have or anything like that, even though I don't have like, super amazing, friends or like, a romantic partner or anything, right? I have, a good family, right? I have, You know, I've had some nice teachers. I've gotten along pretty well with, you know, peers and coworkers that I've had, you know, almost every single one of them, right? You know, resource-wise, you know, I've had, you know, a comfortable bed. You know, I've had, you know, I've had good food. I've had clean water. I've had, you know, clean clothes and all kinds of appliances to, you know, keep stuff clean. You know, dishwasher. You know, got dryer and washing machine. You know, we got, you know, I got all these things, and I want to. I feel like, you know, I need to, sometimes I'm not as, maybe as grateful, or at least maybe not as kind of aware of the significance of the things around me, at least in like actively feeling that way. Like, I think I cognitively understand. Like, I think I'd be like, yeah, I understand that, you know, all these things are expensive, right? I have, you know, good resources and all that. But, you know, I kind of, I've just gotten used to all these things. And I kind of feel like that if, you know, moving to a different place, right, even just temporarily, you know, right, so whether that be like a trip somewhere, like I'm doing later this year, or, you know, or whether it be, you know, maybe some kind of, you know, family outing, or you know, or maybe, you know, moving, you know, permanently, you know, to another city, another state, another country, etc. Right? You know, kind of simultaneously thinking about how do I recognize and reconciliate with the change of the things that I have, or the environment around me, right? So, you know, if you're moving from one place to another, or you may not have all the same, you know, luxuries, or whatever, as another place. I don't think you have as many expenses. It really depends on, you know, where you're going and why you're doing it, you know. I'm going to put the cereal away. I don't know, but you know, just trying to be. I don't know. I guess I feel like I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just me hyperfixating over too much on like personality type stuff and all that, you know. But right, you know, as I say, with, you know, in the description of my you know, the description of my YouTube channel, right? My channel page. Click on my name at the bottom of this video, underneath it, wherever it is on your screen. Right, and I say that you know, I'm an INTP, you know, and then I say, you know, my Enneagram type and all that stuff, right? You know, and well, I mean, I haven't really done very many personal type videos, honestly. maybe I don't know, do more of those. I don't know. Something or other. Well, anyways, right. I know that with that, right, with my personality type, Myers-Briggs system. You don't even know what that is. Basically, just it's basically just kind of a way of kind of just looking at how, you know, people understand the world around them, how they make decisions, you know, where they get their energy from, what kind of information they focus on, basically all that kind of good stuff, right? You know, and but you know, there's these things called cognitive functions, which are basically like kind of just the ways that people process, make decisions, you know, and you know, each one has kind of different roles, position, you know, within each type. So we have different strengths and weaknesses essentially. And one of the weaknesses of my type is sensing, which is basically in Myers-Briggs system at least, basically all about kind of being present, being in tune with the environment around you. And for myself, like I'm unlike what the description when I say the descriptions that some of these websites may say for what it needs to be, like SE experts, it's blind or whatever. It does not mean like I'm literally blind. Maybe it just means like, I'm not most recognizing or in tune with that environment, which I think is true. But I don't, unlike the descriptions, right? I don't really. I mean, it has happened on occasion, but I generally don't, just stumble into stuff for or whatever. I don't know. I mean, not to say, like hasn't happened, but I mean, who has it not happened to, but anyways, so I guess for myself, the whole point of this thing here is that sometimes I'm just really focused on like what it is that I'm thinking about, and and I'll pay like some attention to my environment, right, to make sure like I obviously don't do anything stupid or dangerous, right? Or like if someone's trying to get my attention, right? Like for example, if like I'm at work or whatever, and someone needs to, call my attention to I don't know, check on some task or something, or tell me it's time to take a break or whatever, right? I'm trying to, keep my awareness out for stuff like that, right? But I guess really I just I kind of just focus on whatever my thoughts are, and a lot of the times I kind of just get asked, what do you like, for example, with there's probably all kinds of different things I could say. It could be like, oh, so what do you think of how this let's say like how this plant looks, right? Or how does this, or maybe not how does this plant looks, but like maybe how does this maybe there's like a certain, I don't know, scene or something, whether that maybe that's we'll just say like if you've ever gone to those like super lush like flower gardens or anything, right? Or if you've seen any like really nice lawns, anyone's houses or anything like that, right? Like I'll think like, yeah, that looks nice, right? Like I can definitely tell that it looks nice, and what doesn't look nice, but it's kind of hard for me to kind of really be impressed by that, because it's just like, yeah, it looks nice, but like, I don't know, maybe that's not the best example, because whatever, maybe it's just more so with like paying attention to the details of something that you're not used to. I could probably just be I've not really done landscaping work for a long time or anything like that, and I don't know, probably more of just you only really don't pay as much attention to stuff that you're not used to, kind of dealio, right? So that there's that caveat, but regardless, I'm kind of just like I'm like, yeah, sure, like that looks nice, but like it doesn't like feel like impressive, whatever. It just feels like, yeah, it's it's pleasant, it's well maintained, right? It maybe it smells a little nice or whatever, but it doesn't feel like, oh, like wow, like I'm having this sort of like boom, like euphoric experience or anything, right? Or I don't feel like I don't get that, and I don't, maybe I just take this stuff too literally when people say like, oh, this is like very good or whatever, and I kind of just expect it to be like like a supernatural sort of experience or some random shit or whatever, I don't know, but Well, maybe just my standards are too fucking high or unrealistic, but I mean, could be that. But ooh, just having some pineapple there. That's pretty sweet. So, it's very nice. But I don't know. I guess you know, so earlier on when I was talking about like the whole thing of we're trying to maintain that feeling. What was I was saying, right? You know, when you go to a new place, or maybe when you try some kind of new thing, where you kind of get a lot of people, myself included, sometimes you kind of get a little bit of like a high sensation. Well, probably not the right term for that, but you hopefully you know what I mean by that. And you kind of get this sort of high sort of sensation of like, oh, right, this new thing that I'm trying, or this new place I'm at, it feels like wonderful, it feels magical. Basically, just sort of a honeymoon effect, I guess, is a way to describe it, right? You know, in that pretty frequent experience there. But you know, it's tricky to kind of maintain that. I don't know, or at least like, or even I suppose sometimes, like if you do something, you know, that you really like, you know, but maybe you kind of just get used to it, right? Like you kind of know what to expect, right? So it's kind of that sort of emotion is kind of like, it's sort of comparable to, you know, when you take certain drugs, you kind of just, you know, right, your body gets used to it, so you have to have a higher level of that thing to be able to experience the same high, and you're basically constantly just pushing and pushing to see, then probably, I mean, you know, kind of know how that goes, and people get very, very ill, you know, to say the least, from that kind of stuff. But that's not really what I'm talking. I'm not really here to talk about. I'm not really here to talk about drugs, but what I am trying to say here is that I kind of wonder, like, okay, so if I am going to, like, if I change like my circumstances, if I change, you know, like, oh, you know, maybe I'm living on my own at my own little, you know, small home or something here in the States, or maybe I'm, you know, or maybe, you know, maybe the time is, you know, later this year, and, you know, I'm studying in Sydney, Australia, at the university there, right? You know, or whatever, really, I guess, you know, like, you know, how much does that change me or my life or anything? And I think you know, your external circumstances definitely do have an impact. I think it's wrong to ignore that, especially if we're talking, like, we're comparing between like different groups of people, like, for especially like, you know, like you know, like your socioeconomic status and all that, right? That's definitely very, very big, right? Especially, you know, we're talking about that, you know, we're talking with, you know, race, gender, or, you know, all these things that, you know, definitely, you know, that maybe they are, you know, social constructs, but we definitely feel the real effects of them, right? Real people, you know, face all kinds of bullshit because, you know, they are, you know, they're black, or they're Hispanic, or, you know, Latino, or Latina, or whatever that term is, or, you know, or they're Asian, or they're, you know, female, or they're, you know, basically all kinds of different people in this world experience discrimination for that. So I just want to include that point, because I think it would be wrong for me to not do so. You know, I kind of show that I understand that is absolutely a factor in this, right? It's definitely a very important thing to point out. But just as saying for myself, right? Just saying like, okay, so let's just assume for all purposes, the thing I'm kind of talking about here for my own personal life, kind of just break it back down a bit, right? On scope, right? So let's say overall, my clothes and food and housing and whatever, they basically, either all stay kind of the same. They're all high quality, if they're not exactly the same stuff I have now, but let's just assume like I'm just trading out one set of high quality things, food, clothes, bed, etc., for another one, or at least changing out some of that stuff, right? Or maybe I'm going somewhere, or maybe like for example, I'm going to a country that has better like work benefits, or this is a thing I've talked about a lot on here, like paid vacation, paid parental leave, paid holidays, work hours, work expectations, all this kind of stuff, right? And I think that those are all, or healthcare or transportation or all these things, and they are absolutely, I do think that they are absolutely very important. I think that, I still think that is a good decision for me to, try to move somewhere where those kind of things are a lot more normal, right? They're viewed as human rights instead of just job benefits, right, stuff that's a lot more likely to be guaranteed to you, or at least you have a much higher chance of getting. I don't know. I mean, probably over exaggerating because I'm privileged, so there's that. But still, still pretty expensive, nonetheless, right? But even so, right, even if I make, a really smart decision and I move somewhere where these kind of things do exist, and I have more free time, and I don't have to work as many hours, right? And, I don't have to worry about a lot of these costs of different things as much, or at least not in the same ways. And let's just assume, like, okay, so like, yeah, I have all these things, right? And it does impact me. It does, mean that I can kind of enjoy some of the stuff a little more, but it's really fundamentally up to myself to, like, I have to change. If I want to feel more satisfied in my life, I can't just change my external circumstances. I can't just change, oh, this is where I'm living. This is, the stuff I have, or whatever. I don't know. Because really, if I want to, I want to feel like I have some kind of life or something, but I don't really feel like I do. And I don't know really what the most to make of that, because I know that, it could be like, well, I'm kind of just at this point in my life or whatever, but you could kind of just say, like, for a lot of people, they could just be like, well, I'll start, I'm, once I get to this point in my life, right? Or, like once, for example, like maybe if you're married, or maybe, you have a car, maybe you, get your first house, or maybe you, whatever that external sort of arbitrary point in your life, if you will, is that you may decide on or marker or something like that, right? It doesn't really change, you or me as a person. It doesn't really, I don't know. Sometimes maybe it does a little more, but I'm just trying to think that's because, I'm kind of saying all this stuff because, I've talked about this kind of thing with, oh, I'm going to move or whatever, right? Or at least I've considered it pretty heavily, very seriously. I've talked about it with a handful of people at least, right? And they do think that, a lot of the stuff that I'm saying makes sense, or it's, smart, it's reasonable, all that, right? So I'm not making bad decisions or anything. So I think, maybe I am, But, maybe there's something I'm missing. But maybe I'm kind of just being like, well, maybe I just sort of over focused on, these kind of things when I didn't really think as much about like, oh, but why would I want to go somewhere else beyond just I have better, I have a cheaper, healthcare, right? Or I have public transportation, or I have, more time off or anything like that, or. And even though that, yes, these kind of things may give me the more of the chance to, have time to do things or have the energy for it or not feel as exhausted or whatever, right? It does not mean that I would actually do those things, whatever these things that I keep on saying arbitrarily are, right? I'm sorry, just kind of circling around here and just trying to move my legs just a bit. Right, it's like, if, I don't really feel like I have, like I said, I don't really feel like I have a life. Like, I work, I went to school, right? I played some games, I watched some TV, but like, I don't really feel like, oh, I'm, doing stuff. There's no real like outline in life. There's no real like guidebook on here's how to have a life. Here's, what you have to do to feel satisfied. Because it's different for everybody. It's different for everyone. There's different social expectations at play, different demands of life, or different things that we're able to do. Right? If you're a disabled person, right? If you're, if you're, in a minority group, it's going to be a lot harder for you to be able to do a lot of things that someone like myself, white, white, cisgender, heterosexual, Christian American-born man, right, is able to do, right, right, so, there's that, but, I don't know, it's just like, I feel like, it's like, what is there that, right, would make me sort of like, oh, well, this is a sort of, passion or purpose, or like, there's this kind of, I don't know, maybe not necessarily like there's like, oh, I serve this like one specific purpose, but like, maybe at least you maybe want to, maybe I want to feel like some parts of my life feel like they're, well, probably not, exactly the same my own version or whatever, right? But you kind of feel like, oh, this is kind of like a myth. This is a legend. This feels like, it feels like a, beautiful and dramatic and, a wonderful story and all this stuff, right? But other times I feel like life is just very, you really just have to focus so much on the practical stuff. You really just have to focus on, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to get food on the table? How am I going to be able to, have time to be with family? All that good stuff, right? Things that go through a lot of people's heads. And so it's kind of just the whole thing of like, I don't know. I guess it's my whole thing too, where like I know it's just like circling back, but it's kind of just like, maybe, yeah, sure, maybe I don't know exactly what it is that, right, I would want to maybe say like, oh, I want to do this or that with my life or whatever, but like, and I recognize that there's no perfect place on earth. I recognize there's always going to be boring ass practicalities you're going to have to deal with. I'm going to have to deal with. And maybe, just ignoring the whole like, oh, just find magic in the ordinary moments bullshit that I hear people say online. Crap, because I don't feel that. I don't see it. I can try. And, certain things like food or, or maybe like certain small gestures or whatever, sure. But like beyond that, you're talking like ordinary days where like, like, yeah, be grateful, but like, let's not like over glorify it either. That's not, well, anyways, right, that's the whole thing where I feel like for myself, all that most of the people do in this country, in the United States of America, is we just work. We just work and we consume stuff. There's not really much else that I feel like most of the people really do. Well, at least, no, maybe not most. It's probably too broad generalization, probably too big. Right? We mostly, a lot of people here, correct myself, we just work, we consume stuff, right? We work, we get money, we just spend stuff, right? Whether that money is to get practical things like, food or house or transportation or whatever, right? But, or we just consume stuff. We just, eat junk food, we watch television, we play games, we sit on our phones and we just scroll them. And I don't think there's anything necessarily like wrong with these kind of things, but it just feels like, it's funny for me to critique because it's literally all that I do, but, so I feel like. But at the same time, too, it's kind of the thing of where it's just like, I don't, at the same time, I'm kind of questioning, like, would I actually do anything different, right? Because, like, I know that a lot of the times before, when people try to be like, oh, you can join this club, or you can do this group activity, right? Or you can, join this sport, group or something, right? And usually it might be more the issue for myself, as I mentioned earlier on in my life, I was much more antisocial. And so it's the thing where my parents are trying to get me to, especially they're trying to get me to, make friends, connect, all that, but I just kept on kind of just turning down a lot of stuff, even though it's kind of hurting me, right? But, it's just like, would I actually do anything different? Because I know I get uncomfortable with change. But I know at the same time, too, if I just stay here, I feel like I'm just going to get stressed out by a lot of the practicalities of things, or like not really being able to have, for example, like cheaper healthcare when I'm older, or, or being able to have public transportation, right? Because that basically doesn't exist in most of the United States, right? You're just forced to drive. Now, obviously, I'm not going to drive, right? Because I feel it feels very overwhelming to me, and it's also really, really expensive. There's all kinds of shit with that I really don't feel that comfortable, doing or trying to learn. So it's kind of just the whole dilemma thing here, and I don't really know what to do. But, I mean, what am I planning to do? I'm planning on just trying to, kind of just, I'm going to have these next couple of school years, right? And I'm going to try to get some jobs, get some more work experience, get more money, and then at some point, I don't probably, maybe not immediately after, right? But maybe within a few years of, me finishing college, right? Try to move abroad, try to, move somewhere else, get my own place there, probably like a small ass house or apartment, but I don't need anything big, as long as it has, utilities, isn't too dirty, and, nice people around there, and stuff like that, then, that's something, right? That's something, and I don't want to just, I don't want to just, not have any plans, not have any idea what the fuck I want to do with any bit of my life after college is over, right? I mean, I can't know everything with my future. I can't know what I'm going to do, but, I have to have something, right? You know, I feel like I have to have something. I feel like I have to have some kind of idea or whatever, especially because like a lot of people are going to ask. A lot of people ask, what do you want to do, after college, right? It's the whole point of going to college, right, is to get a major, so you can get a job, so you can make money, so you can buy the shit you need, right? So they want to know, like, what job, what's your plan for, your kind of stuff, because, that's the kind of society we live in. But, at the same time, I feel like I get the message of just, try things out, explore stuff, right? Have fun because you're young. I'm sorry, what the fuck do you want me to do? Make up your mind. Do you want me to work or do you want me to have fun? Do you want me to explore? Do you want me to settle? Do you want me to, like, I get you do all these, you can do both, but like, I just feel so confused by the messaging. Like, I feel so confused by the things that I hear people say, the demands that I feel like are expected, not just of me, but just of young people in general, so frequently, and I don't know what to do with that. And so I was really just been spiraling here for the last, I don't even really know how long, a little while at least. But I mean, again, I don't know. I mean, maybe, again, a lot of these things aren't maybe as bad or as harsh as I'm afraid. I don't know. Or maybe I kind of wondered this, like, do I purposefully try to get myself to expect or to think it's going to be worse so that when bad things do happen, I won't be disappointed, right? I'll just be like, yeah, I knew this was going to happen, right? So I just expect bad things to happen and hope for the best, but maybe that kind of removes, maybe me trying to feel prepared, maybe me trying to feel like I have something figured out, right? Or that I'm not gonna fall for that, negative emotional experience kind of just is part of what keeps me from enjoying life a little bit more, maybe, right? Maybe you have to open yourself up to, risk, to failure, to random, bits of life and all the fun directions it takes you, and just accept the fact that you're going to get hurt and you have to be vulnerable to that. You have to surrender to that, right? I have to just surrender to the flow of life and just deal with the fact that I'm going to get hurt by it instead of trying to resist it and trying to plan everything out, but I don't know. Anyways, I'm sorry. I was really long there, but hopefully the stuff I said made some sense. I honestly genuinely don't know, but I feel like, I don't really have to. There's no one really saying I, have to. It's really just myself, but I feel like I should talk about, like, other stuff, or more, like, more positive things, or more, happy experiences and all that. I don't know, maybe I will in my life, but, anyways, so yeah, I'm gonna end this video off here. I'm gonna make another one where, I just got into my room here, so I'll make it literally just right after I end this video. And I'm just gonna show my room here and all that. I gotta turn some lights on, maybe move a few things. I don't know. I don't really care too much, but if you're interested to watch after this video, wait for the next one, or maybe it's already in your recommended when you're watching this. I don't know. Anyways, see you next one. Peace out. If you liked it, if you liked this video, resonated with anything I said, or any videos I've done before and you want to see more stuff like that, feel free to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell. And I'll see you in the next one.